The Chinese know, and the Russians know, having spent the last 15 years building themselves up, growing their economies much faster than the United States, and much faster than the United States and its G7 allies, that they now have in their BRICS alliance people from whom they can buy, people to whom they can sell, and those people are more than half the population of the world and have shown in the Ukraine war that they can absorb whatever it is that the United States and Western Europe of Russia. When Russia couldn't sell its oil and gas to the Europeans, did they collapse the way the Europeans promised? No. Did the ruble disappear the way the Europeans promised? No. Did the levying of much more than a big tariff, a literal embargo, we're not going to buy your oil and gas, we're not going to let you use our SWIFT international payments system, we're going to seize $300 billion of assets back in your currency that you have kept in Western institutions, and so on. All of these things, which in total are a bigger effort against Russia than what Mr. Lindsey Graham now proposes, they all failed. So I got news for Mr. Graham. His proposal, if it were adopted, will not only fail to hold back Russia and China in the way all the previous sanctions and limits and tariffs have failed, but will enhance the already badly damaged reputation of the United States, and I mean enhance it as a rogue, as the biggest single threat to global trade and global economic development in the world, which for the United States is a very bad sort of self-destructive behavior. This is the behavior of a desperate government going down, and in the language I learned as a kid, trying to take everybody down with it, or using whatever you might call the last card, if we're going to stay with that metaphor, the last card they can imagine playing, because they've run out of all the other cards that they used to have available. They don't have it available. The irony is the nuclear weapons they built up they can't use, and the rest of the weapons they don't have anymore, and so they're stuck with this sort of situation. I see it, and I don't think it can work. I think it's desperate, not only because it is so disruptive and it is so chaotic and it is so risky, but it's also desperate because I don't think the conditions are there. And I think that more and more of the world sees that. And for this kind of a major bluff to work, you can't be seen as bluffing. The Chinese are not bending, no matter what. Let's remember, he had tariffs a few weeks ago in the neighborhood of 140, whatever it was, %. And that made no difference at all. You know, he just had a meeting with Xi Jinping, if I understand yesterday, a telephone call, having spent the last 10 days asking for one. That's not the behavior of somebody who is terrorized by what you're proposing or what you're threatening. The Chinese took the time and the care to produce an economic miracle, which includes an alliance that is crucial to them, precisely because it creates enough of a world market for them to buy from and sell to, that the United States' abilities that we won't let you here, okay, don't. I want to remind people, over the last week, if I'm not mistaken, all the leaders of Europe were on their knees cutting deals with the Chinese. They're desperate too. And they are the ones, because of their subordination, their inability to act independently from the United States anywhere, is now hobbling them. They are learning that the cost of being subordinate to the United States can be very high. They were riding nicely for several decades. They were able to be social democratic to their own working class because the United States saved them from spending money on defense. But the United States can't do it. Well, the United States is throwing the Europeans right under the bus. We're not doing this anymore. You're going to have to do it for yourself. Yes, but we can't do that and be the social democratic societies we were developed over history to be. And if you make us impose an austerity, then you will see that the Mélenchon in France and their equivalents everywhere else will take the power in Europe because they can ride your inability. The Germans, we're spending $80 billion on defense. Oh, really? How's that going to play in their own country? Not well. Mr. Merz is a very thin majority. Mr. Macron has no majority. And Starmer has pissed away the little bit of bump he got because the conservatives were so awful. They now face the reality that another Trump-like figure, Farage, may become their next leader. These are societies in advanced levels decay. So I don't think the United States can do most of what it is they're threatening to do. I don't see it. I don't see them able to get the rest of the world to go along with this desperate effort now that they're a debtor nation, now that the rest of the world has caught up or exceeded them. They're not in a position to dictate, and they don't understand it. They have the biggest military. They are very rich. It's very hard for them, as it was for the British before them, to understand that they are now going back to what they were, a small offshore wet island off of Europe. That's the British Empire's resting place. And the United States is going its path to a decline from its peak. And all you have is a desperate leadership that wants, on the one hand, to pander to the public awareness by pretending the decline of the empire isn't happening, while at the same time taking these extraordinarily desperate, chaotic, disruptive steps in a final last effort to do what isn't anymore available to them to do. In many ways, the world's manufacturers are comparing the United States and the People's Republic of China as possible or likely locations for manufacturing industry. China in recent years has not imposed tariffs in anything like the way the United States has. It hasn't been changing the few tariffs it imposed because most of them are responses to what Mr. Trump did, if they happened at all. The country is very stable. It has promised manufacturers that if you come to China, you will have access to well-educated, well-disciplined, relatively low-wage workers, and you will have access to the largest and fastest-growing market in the world. They have consistently offered that to the world's manufacturers, and after much hesitation, the world's manufacturers took the invitation and went there, including many American megacorporations. They voted with their feet that they preferred being in a country run by a communist party, which was the political adversary, more or less, of the United States, of which they were a company, because that was a better deal than the United States could offer them. What do we have now? China is offering pretty much the same it always did, and doing a good job of giving reasons to go there. Their technology is now top of the line. The dispersion of their industry, extraordinary. Their social stability, equally extraordinary. Whereas the United States, we don't know from one day to the next what the tariffs will be. We don't know from 1 week to the next what the value of the dollar in exchange will be. We don't know how long Mr. Trump will survive as president. We don't know what he'll do. We don't know what his successors will do. So yeah, if in that situation, all the cards say go to China, then what Mr. Trump is doing are marginal shifts that cannot change that process. Whatever he does, it's marginal to what all led to what we have now lived through in the last 30 to 40 years, which is the deindustrialization. That's why we are cutting Medicaid and food stamps. Mr. Starmer in England is reducing the money laid out for people with disabilities, and the Chinese got an award for lifting 800 million people out of poverty. Hello, there's a difference here. And that difference has to do with the totality. No company is going to come here because of a tariff for a moment or a value of the dollar for a while. There are too many other variables that they need to have under control that aren't under control here or going in the wrong direction. 18% drop in the value of the dollar. That means if you come here and you have inputs that are imports, what are you going to do? You factor that in? That erases whatever the benefit. Think clearly and you will understand. The biggest likelihood for a downturn in the American economy is the fact that we're going to have stagnation because the industrial foundation of this economy keeps shrinking, as do the recent numbers for manufacturing in this country. The return of manufacturing has not happened. He promised it in his first administration. It did not happen. Mr. Biden promised it. It did not happen. Mr. Trump has promised it again. It still hasn't happened. You have to now answer the question, why not? And that's because the totality of variables that any decision-making corporate executive uses says, don't be crazy, don't undertake the costs and the risks of moving production to the United States, given the uncertainties and the instability of what is going on in the United States. And Mr. Herky-jerky Trump tariff policy and interest rate policy only makes that worse. It wasn't very long ago, I'm talking a matter of months, when there was nearly parity between the euro and the dollar. I checked this morning and the euro is now costing $1.18. Okay, that's a devaluation relative to the euro of 18%. Mr. Trump's tariffs, by the way, a devaluation of the dollar by 18% means that you have a situation, you have to give more and more dollars to get the European currency. It's a statement to everyone in the world who has dollar assets, who holds anything denominated in a dollar, like a U.S. Treasury note, of which there are 700 billion in the hands of China, of which there are 1 trillion in the hands of Japan, and so on, are now worth 18% less. That is a screaming message because, as Michael correctly says, that's a devaluation at a speed that is frightening. That is a screaming recommendation to people to get rid of the dollar before they suffer worse losses. They've been doing that for the last year, and they're going to continue to do it since there is no end in sight. And if Mr. Powell or his successor is going to lower interest rates because Mr. Trump is beating the drum to do it, it will make all of that likely worse. Well, I would add that we should remember one more historical reality. Successive kings of France accumulated wealth. But when the accumulation of wealth reached absolutely insane proportion in the 18th century, when you would have unbelievable urban poverty in Paris, and an hour away in Versailles, you would see, as you can still see today, the most spectacular collection and concentration of wealth imaginable by the last king. He's also the one who got his head chopped off. That's how that story of the accumulation. And when you watch Jeffrey Bezos take over the city of Venice for 2 weeks of indulgence of his wedding, when he arrives at the port in his $500 million yacht, that's what we're watching. We're watching this eon's Versailles, and we're going to get the next step of it likely also. The BRICS are becoming the economic alternative, the other context for Russia, China, India, Brazil, and South Africa, and the other countries that are involved. They are now in a position to do what they never could do before in at least 300 or 400 years. Namely, live, grow without a dependency on the United States or Western Europe or Japan. And that is what this statistic shows. They could find in one another the market for their exports and the source for their needed inputs that it would enable them to have a growth path adequate to sustain those societies. That's never been true, in my judgment, before. Part of the result of colonialism and its lasting economic achievement was to force Asia, Africa, and Latin America into a subordinate position in Western capitalism, so that whatever they might do, their dependence on that subordinated position would hold them back from doing anything that the West didn't want them to do, which included becoming independent. Oh, they could become, after a while, independent politically when that couldn't be prevented anymore, when the Mau Mau in Kenya and Mahatma Gandhi in India put an end to all of that. They were still subordinate to the economic capitalism. Now, for the first time, they have created an institution that was the dream of the Bandung Conference back in 1955, but could not be realized. Now it's realized. And the credit for that goes to China. This has nothing to do with endorsing what happens in China or being critical of China, which you can be and should be in many ways. They have their flaws like everybody else. But what they have achieved, no amount of pretense can take away from them. They now are able to say to the United States that the longer you act as a rogue nation in the world, the more we will build an alternative to you that will, in the end, isolate you. And you better be careful lest the policies you choose accelerate your isolation rather than overcome it. The only meaningful economic act achieved by Mr. Trump in his first presidency was the tax cut of December 2017. Let's remember, that was an enormous tax cut for corporations and the rich. It happened at the end of a 40-year period, mid-70s to 2015, 40 years, during which we have had a massive redistribution of wealth from the bottom and the middle to the people at the top. Never, therefore, in the year 2017, never did an American corporate sector or rich sector need a tax cut less than they did at the end of a 40-year redistribution. Mr. Trump gave it to them anyway, and that signaled an out-of-control ruling class that is simply grabbing as much as they can before it all disappears. A behavior very common in empires that are declining. The people at the top are in a position, because they're at the top, to hold on to wealth. Everybody else pays the price of the declining empire. So weak were the Democrats in 2017 that the only thing they could do was not to stop the tax cut, not to stop all the damage it did, but to put a proviso that it would end on the 31st of December of this year, 2025, 8 years into the future then. What did they bring Mr. Trump back into office for? To do the next logical step, to get rid of the little limit that the Democrats in their weakness imposed. And that's what this new bill does. It permanently fixes the cuts of 2017. It negates the sunset they were supposed to suffer at the end of this year, and they add a few more. Therefore, the gross inequality of the last 40 years, which was worsened by the tax cut of 2017, will be further worsened by what we're going through now. And in my opinion, that's the biggest threat to social stability in this country at this time. You are taking away medical supports for poor people at the same time that you are giving the wealthy yet another. It is grotesque. As, by the way, even a significant number of Republican and Democratic politicians have been able to say. It is grotesque. You are taking away from the food stamp, the SNAP program, supports that they give. From the poorest people, you take food and medical care. This is like a cartoon come to life. And it is a severe additional inequality that the country suffers. I did some work on the New York City where I live, economic situation. The city of New York is the richest city in the United States, and the city city of New York is among the 10 poorest cities. Both statistics are correct. How is it counted? If you take a measure, the percentage of the people in a city who live at or below the poverty line, you can get a list of the 10 poorest cities. New York City is among them. If you ask about wealth, New York City is the richest city in the country. Listen to these numbers. 380,000 millionaires live in New York City. 88 people who have 100 million or more live in New York City, and 66 billionaires live in New York City. How is a city as rich as that among the 10 poorest cities in the country? Because we live in a society in which the gap between rich and poor is stupefying, and that's not tenable. That's not tenable in any society very long, but in a society whose entire 20th century was devoted to saying we are the exceptional society. We don't have rich and poor. Everybody here is in the middle class. A society trained with that, dumped into what's happening now, is a recipe for catastrophe. And the poor people look and they watch and they see that there are special police called ICE who beat up and harass poor immigrants. How much of a step do you think it takes to wonder whether the next poor people they will be going after are the ones that were born here? That in Los Angeles, there is now a volunteer civilian patrol. Local people who mobilize and drive their cars in and around the immigrant neighborhoods with cameras, who have been trained by lawyers as to what immigrants' rights actually are and what by ICE can or cannot legally do. There it is, folks. There's the escalation. We're going to have an army on both sides. This is the end of whatever the consensus was that held this country together. We are watching the people at the top desperate to become even more wealthy than they already are. And this is their own undoing. And they will all look back when Warren Buffett, himself one of our great billionaires, told us over the recent years that there's something wrong, that his secretary pays a higher percentage of taxes on her income than he does on his. And there is a great anxiety right now in Washington. I don't want to minimize this. And Mr. Trump doesn't have clear sailing. There's a great deal of anxiety that, for example, eliminating USAID, whatever you think of it, is damaging American soft power. It was an agency that did some good around the world, hyped the good it did for the maximum amount of publicity you could get for it. But those are parts of what successful empires do. It made sure that when votes came up in the United Nations, it could mobilize pretty much the whole world to vote in a particular way, to make it look like what the United States was doing was globally supported. All of that is gone now. One of the reasons they're giving all the money to the military is their economic influence is shrinking, their political influence is shrinking. Really, one of the few things they have is the ability to keep being the number one military power, at least by the amount that they spend. There's a famous statistic, been well known for the last 50 years, that the United States spends more on military than the next 9 countries together spend. And those 9 include Russia and China, and the remaining ones are all allies of the United States. With this overwhelming predominance, you're getting a mentality that shouldn't surprise you, that the military has to be what we celebrate and focus on and rely on. And I think you could see it coming up when a decision is made a week or so ago by Mr. Trump unilaterally to bomb Iran, a country with whom we were not at war, which had not declared on us, nor we on them, that we were in the midst of actual negotiations with. Mr. Trump suddenly hit them with a bomb, and then immediately the next day say, now let's sit down and talk. That is a use of the military to intimidate and to shape and to control what's going on. And maybe it'll work for a while, but it is the last card they have to play. And it should be understood in that light. And that's why the BRICS are important. And I need to say to some of my fellow economists, this is not an argument that the BRICS represent the socialist future or that the BRICS are homogeneous. They're not. Mr. Modi in India is a different thing from Xi Jinping in China. And they're both very different from Lula in Brazil, and so on. They have enormous differences, as an international collection of 25 countries would have to be. What I'm focusing on is the project they all share. That's what's remarkable. They haven't been able to do that in the past. They haven't overcome all of their differences to be able to do that in the past. They are now being caught up, in my judgment, in this historic moment of the final end of the colonialism that they know they've been fighting all of their lives. They know the end is in sight. And the United States is a society devoted to not seeing what I just said. That's why in the last presidential election, neither Mr. Trump nor Mr. Biden nor Kamala Harris ever said a word about a declining empire. This is the greatest example of collective denial that you could ask for. But for just that reason, it jumps out at those of us who don't need to deny it. We see it all too clearly.